Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jobs Fuck podcast, a place where emergency services can anonymously share their funny stories, rants, and accolades. Remember, you power this mission to make emergency service workers feel heard and feel less alone. If you have a story to tell, you can email in at thejobpod25@gmail.com or send me a message or voice note on Instagram at the Jobs Fuck podcast or at J Dartmoor. You can support the mission by supporting me on Patreon, grabbing some merch, or subscribing. All those links and everything else is in the description. And I am very happy today to announce that I am joined by the one and only ex-police officer and founder of the Pocket Sergeant app, Paul Cooper. Paul, how are you, mate?
I'm great, thank you. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm all right, Paul. I'm a little bit warm because I get the sound right and everything else. I basically got to shut all the windows. I've got a little fan across from there, which I kind of get a little bit of breeze from every now and then. But yeah, it can get a little bit warm. So if you see me getting red and sweaty during the course of our conversation, then that's probably why. However, given some of the stories which have been sent through and some of the things we're going to be talking about, I imagine I'll be getting red for a few different reasons. But no, I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. So what's Paul, you've got your own podcast, I believe. So give that a bit of a shout out.
Yeah, so around 6 weeks ago, started the Pocket Sergeant podcast. We've done about eight or nine episodes so far, and from what I've been told, it's now in the top 10% of podcasts worldwide. It's just
That's
where,
insane.
yeah, police officers, former police officers, anybody interested in the criminal justice system, or has had run-ins with the criminal justice system, they can come on, tell their stories.
The top 10% of podcasts, that's absolutely amazing. And that just shows that there is a hunger in the emergency services for conversations like this to happen. Because, I mean, you're probably the same as me. I get loads of messages from ambulance workers, police officers, people who are working in the emergency services who basically say, we just can't fucking say anything. Like the bosses turn around and say, how's morale? How's this? How's that? But it's basically lip service and nothing ever changes. But yet someone gets promoted off the back of our feedback. So, it's a great
Yeah,
thing. And
it's the former cops that have got the voice for the current cops. So
yeah,
now they've left the job, they're telling us just exactly what's going on in the job. So yeah, I think it's down to us to almost be a soundboard for cops.
100%, mate. And like I said, I mean, not just the cops, but the emergency service in general, and certainly like the prison service as well. I mean, I've spoken to loads of prison officers, and they just get forgotten about because once somebody's locked away, you kind of forget they exist, don't you? You might hear of them in the news every now and then, but of course, these horrible people are locked in together, and there's people who obviously have to make sure that they're looked after every day. So shout out to me, shout out to prison officers out there. Thank you very much for everything what you do. You are amazing, guys and gals. So, okay. So, what we're going to do, Paul, is we're going to start with the story of the week. Now, this is obviously quite relevant with what we've been with. Try again. So, what we're going to do, Paul, is we're going to start with the story of the week. Okay. And the story of the week this week is to do with the Notting Hill Carnival. And this is off the back of a post I saw. And it says, Monday, the 25th of August, as a result of the Met's proactive policing operation, there have been so far 423 arrests over the main 2 days of Notting Hill Carnival. As of 1945 hours, the number of arrests on Monday was 223, with 177 at the carnival itself and 46 on approaches to the events. The updated number on Sunday was 200, with 149 on the carnival itself and 51 on the approaches to the events. 52, and this is what I want to ask you about, Paul. 52 of the arrests were as a result of ID, of a facial recognition ID. Now,
Oh
before we
yeah,
get into that, I just want to say, let us just take a moment to pray for the officers working in the Notting Hill this weekend. Often 17-hour shifts, barely anything to eat, running on fumes, and standing for eternity. And I actually shared something on my Patreon today of a bunch of police officers sat down having a minute on a load of steps, which I'm sure people in the public eye will go, "Whoa, why are those cops sitting down?" Well, probably because they've not drank anything for the past 12 hours, mate. So, what's your thoughts on the Notting Hill Carnival, anyway?
it's controversial, isn't it? I
Okay.
can't say I've ever been. I've never been. I've never policed it, and I think all we know is what we get told in the press primarily. Um, Yeah, it's one of those things that I don't think I can have a strong opinion on without either visiting or policing it. But the number of arrests, but the number of arrests there, it's outrageous.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know what people have actually been locked up for.
So I actually did have a look at this. So if you give me just 2 seconds, I will find out for you. So this is what we've got so far. So from what I've seen, is we have over 100 arrests prior to the events to remove high risk individuals. They're proactive
Yeah.
arrests. Facial recognition. We have Section 60 powers. So a lot of them were stop and search. A lot of them were weapons, drugs, assaults, public order violations. Um, yeah, let me just try and find some more specific numbers if I can. I've not got my glasses
I'd
on.
love to know what other events that take place in the UK have similar number of arrests and
It
similar
seems
number
like
of
Notting
officers regularly policing them.
it seems like Notting Hill kind of flies under the radar, doesn't it? Now, I never really even heard of Notting Hill. And I was speaking to my girlfriend today, and she said she'd never really heard of it because it's more of like a London thing. So, but I mean, you're talking. I think there's 1 million people go, and there's obviously I think there was 7,000 officers deployed. So,
Mm.
I mean, 500 and odd arrests was it? I know that recently there was a pro-Palestine action march, which resulted in, I think, the highest arrests on record in a day since the poll tax riots. So it seems to be like when we look at actual disorder in the sense of just using that example, when we look at actual disorder in the sense of like the poll tax riots, where it was much more violent and buildings getting torched, actual riot and stuff, and then we're locking up even more people for basically holding up a placard. It seems like I don't know, like, is there in a bit of agenda there in relation to speech and everything else? That's obviously a topic which is quite high at the moment. But what's your thoughts on this facial recognition stuff? Which the police are deploying right now?
Again, controversial, isn't it?
Hmm.
But how different is it to, for example, are you aware of the Super Recognisers program?
Is that where it's a person?
Yeah, yeah. So people with these abilities that can literally view thousands of images of suspects deployed on the streets, and looking, they're
Right.
looking for these people that are wanted or whatever. But how different is it from that? I mean, for me, I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with the facial recognition stuff. Uh, I don't have an issue with CCTV being everywhere in the high
Mhm.
street or whatever. I'm law abiding, so I don't have a problem. I mean, I'm sure you'll have plenty of other people that are law abiding that do have an issue with it, but for me personally, I don't. And I think any tool that we can use to apprehend offenders, then it's fair game.
I think the majority of people are happy about it. There'll always be that section of the community who are not happy about it, but then you kind of have to ask why. I think I think itself, it isn't a bad thing so long as it doesn't get abused. Because I think that's what a lot of the worry is, because it starts creeping into like mass surveillance then, in that everybody's constantly having their faces put on a
How
database or run through a database.
how could it be abused?
That is an interesting question. So I think it started off with serious offences if someone was wanted for something indictable. But then when we look at certain police forces want more statistics on the board, it could be okay, well, let's lower that threshold slightly to see if somebody's wanted for a much smaller offence and then people get arrested. I think there was a lad got arrested because he was wanted for shoplifting. I think I've seen that. So it's that I think as soon as you bring something in, then it is open to manipulation or being abused. And I think
Yeah.
that's what people are concerned about. Now, when it comes, I mean, I put this on a chat what I'm in, and Bobby said that as a result of facial recognition, he managed to catch a bloke who was in his 70s who groomed a family, and he was walking the 6-year-old, and
Oh, I remember seeing that. Remember
yeah,
seeing
and
that.
he was a sex offender. So that absolutely brilliant, great, well done. Let's
But
use it in that senses.
I think from a police perspective, from a police officer's perspective, those on the ground, it's a good thing. Think of all the outstanding suspects on a cop's job queue. It
Uh-huh.
could be months, months and months and months before you can get hold of the suspect. And before you know it, you've got 10, 15, 20 crimes to investigate. at least with facial recognition, if we're apprehending, even if it's low-level criminals early on, then that's another job gone off the queue of a cop, and then they can focus on the next one.
Very true. I like exploring both arguments with this. I don't just want to be like, oh, let's just fully go for it, because I think with technology, and obviously if it's powerful technology and with the introduction of AI, you have to be cautious of how far you go with stuff like this. I can certainly see its benefits, but I can also see, just because of my somewhat cynical nature when it comes to people in positions of power and agendas and everything else, I can see how it can be abused and manipulated if it's left unchecked. So it's an interesting debate, I think, when it comes to this, and I think that's why it is controversial, because on the face of it, it is a good thing. Like you said, it helps bring people to justice. People who are evading capture are being locked up. Preemptive people, I suppose you can say, this person who's going to the Notting Hill Carnival, he's wanted for rioting. He's likely going to potentially cause more issues there. So then it's that preemptive arrest.
I'd love to know the full extent of what it's used for. We know it's used already for wanted suspects, but what else is it being used for? Is it
Do
being
you
used for
think?
anything else?
Well, that's it, and I think that's the concern. Is like at the minute it's this. Could this then encroach into something later on? What's your thoughts on using it as justification to stop search somebody? So, for example, if you have a guy walking down, or a lady, we have to be fair. If you have a person walking down the street and you know that they have a lot of intel for carrying weapons on them, and they're in that public space, do you think that's then justification to go, well, that person's clearly them, we know it's them, to then go and stop search them?
Is intel alone enough to stop and search somebody?
So I guess it depends on the intel, really. Like, I've
Yeah.
stopped search people because I know that they're a prolific drug user, or I know that they're a drug dealer, or they have weapons on them. Like, they've got markers coming out their ears, and they've got intel dripping off them for this.
Yeah, I think nowadays cops have got to justify a lot more. I mean, you look at some of the high-profile cases with stop and search, for example. I do think cops need more than intel to stop search somebody. Again, it comes down to, I think a lot of it will come down to data. If they're using facial recognition technology as part of their intel gathering, and it's reducing crime, and we're getting people off the streets that shouldn't be on the streets in the first place, then again, I'm open to it. But again, I can see where you're coming from. We need to have a private life. Everybody's got a right to
But, but
private
then
life.
the argument with that is, well, you're on CCTV all the time, and that's technically an invasion of your privacy. But is that being captured for another reason? If you're just on camera, then
Mm.
that's one thing. But if you're on camera and your face is being run through algorithms, and also, algorithms aren't perfect, they can get things wrong. So there could be mistaken identities and everything else. But I think with the big people, like I said, that prolific sex offender, your people that are wanted for serious offences, chances are it's not just one photo you've got of them. They've probably been through the system a few times. So it's more likely to capture them. So like I said, the more um for the more serious crimes and the more serious people who you want to get hold of, like your organized criminals and stuff like that, I think it's a great tool, because in a crowd, you can pick that person out of a crowd and you can preemptively um, intercept.
What we should do, we should submit a freedom of information request and ask all the forces what they're using it for, what exactly they're using it for.
That'll be interesting. Don't be giving
Mm.
me more work to do, Paul. Okay, so a controversial topic when it comes to that deployment, I think if it's used properly, it can be an amazing tool. Really can be. But I think it is open with a new technology like this, which is still in its infancy, and with the evolution of AI and everything else. I think it could potentially, with human error and with human, I don't know, agenda, shall we say, it is open to abuse, and I hope it never gets that way.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you can say the same about anything. You can say the same about policing systems, intel systems, police national computer, all the tools that they've got currently. they are all open to abuse, aren't they?
Hmm. Very true.
All the cops have got access to all this data and equipment. It can be misused.
Very true.
But do the pros outweigh the cons?
Well, I think it's one of them. We'll just have to wait and see. And I hope that it doesn't get to the point where people do start abusing it. I hope it's used for the right reasons. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just a bit more skeptical and cynical these days. I am in my 30s after all. I've lived a bit. So, right. So moving on. So the next one we get into is rants and stories, and we fucking love this bit. This video was sponsored by my best-selling police memoir, The Job's Fuck Secret Diary of a Police Officer. After 10 years in the police service, I finally left and I decided I need to speak out. This book does a deep dive into police corruption, the real reason why the police force is falling apart, and things you will never hear in the mainstream media. You can check it out in the link in the description of this video. You could also grab some merchandise and support me on Patreon. And now, without further ado, enjoy the video. So Instagram, the Jobs Fuck Podcast, or email thejobpod25@gmail.com. You can send me your stories. I'll sanitize them so no one knows who you are and it's all anonymous. And boy, do we have a great time looking over them. Now, I quickly read over some of these just to make sure that they're all okay, but I don't necessarily do a deep dive into them because I still want to have the effect of reading them first time. So, Paul, I'll read them out, and then by all means, you tell me what your thoughts and everything else are. So, this one, um, okay. So, every time you go on if you land on a new block, you become brew bitch, don't you? Like you're the person who's got to make the brews, you got to do the milk, you got to make the brews for the team. So we
I
had
got
a
I got
Bobby
away
here.
with that. I
Oh,
got away
really?
with that. Don't drink
Oh, how
tea.
did? You,
That was
oh, no,
always that was always my thing. Don't drink tea or coffee.
oh, you see, we had people in my block try and pull that one, and he still was like, "Yeah, but we do." So the kettle's over there. It's some might say it's bullying, some might say it's character building, but well, funny enough, that fits into quite well with the story.
or
So
or just or just make them a shit cup of tea first time round.
again,
They'll never ask you again.
you fucking think that, but this is exactly what this story is about. So I remember my first day deliberately making shite brews for the block, thinking no other fucker is going to ask me again. Well, what a stupid thinking on my part. The dog handler didn't like his brew mucked about with, so irate, he grabs me by the scruff of the neck and drags me outside to where he throws me some arm padding. I can see where this is going, and tells me I have 10 seconds until I meet Kaiser. He then gets his dog out of the van. I say a dog. It was like a horse out the fucking apocalypse. I duly run like Forrest Gump's, and Kaiser then legs after me and gets hold of the padding and drags me around everywhere. Needless to say, I never made a shit brew again. I
That
imagine
can't be
this was a
true.
few years
That
back.
can't be true.
I imagine this is a few years back. I think I know who this officer is, and it strikes me as the kind of story that would have happened. Um, a little bit more old in the tooth, this cop. So imagine this was quite a while back because I think the officer's since retired. So we're talking 20, 30 years ago. But you get fucking stuck on for that now. You'd have PSD all over you for that.
That's like yeah. That's mad. That's mad.
I mean, I mean that's one way to teach you to not fuck about with people's booze, I suppose. And it's
Yes.
not that I'm condoning such behaviour like that, but at least the officer made good brews after that. Anyway, but no, send the stories in. We love them. We love looking at them. And if you're listening to this, you should watch it on YouTube because Paul's face when I read that out was absolutely amazing. And like I said, I'm going a little bit red as well at the same time. Oh, okay. So we have a rant here. So ranting coming. As much as I want to try and defend the young in service officers, and there are a handful that are absolutely brilliant, but on the whole, the quality of the 0 to 2 years service is shocking. A good example will be at the weekend. We had an absolute godshite come into the cells and was literally winding up everybody anyway, was literally winding everyone up. Anyway, this cop started to cry and had to be taken out of the challenge room. I was just amazed. I'm not expecting anything big, just stand there and remain professional. But no, we had full tears. Do you get much messages about recruits now? Because I get quite a few. Just saying that the recruits now don't seem to be as robust as they once were.
Do you know what it is? I've been thinking about this a lot And I remember speaking to Brendan O'Brien that came onto the Pocket Sergeant podcast because he does all the police recruitment coaching and stuff like that. And I was just discussing with him, I think what's happened, I think there's been a generational shift. Every generation, there's a shift. So the people that were in the job before us, 10, 20 years before us, we'll have come into the job and those people would have had an opinion about us and the way we policed. So I think younger people coming through now, they're more aware of everything. I think the police service now it used to be treated as a job for life. Like certainly when
Hmm.
I joined, it was a job for life. But now people are joining the police to do 2 or 3 years, build the skills, and then go. I think there's a high turnover. There's a really high turnover in policing as well. I think there's a mixture of not being able to attract the very best because we're not paying them well enough. We're not treating them well enough. But has the quality of police officer gone down? Probably not. I don't think. I'd like to think not. But I just think there has been a generational shift in the way the younger people look at the world and the look at policing. It's just different to how you and I perhaps looked at it. I don't know what your
It,
thoughts are on that.
it definitely used to be a job for life. And I think now, I don't think it's viewed that way. And I think when you look at police pay in real terms, on paper, it looks all right. Like after six,
Mm.
7 years, you're earning 40, 50 grand a year. That looks good. But then when you actually consider inflation in real terms, it's like police are actually paid, I think, about 20% less now than they used to be. And then when you take away the pension contributions, I mean, when I was on top whack, well, not me, bad example. I wasn't in the pension because it was too expensive. But I know officers that were in the pension, and they would spend. They'd have to pay £400-500 a month just on the pension. So straight away, you're having like a fifth of your wage taken off. And I know when I first started, I was starting in the police, I had the same responsibilities as everyone else. But I would be coming home after my pension contribution with about 13, 14, maybe £1,500 a month. And I mean, if you're, I mean, I had a house. I was a single parent at the time, so I just didn't have enough money to make to, to to live really. So I had to come out of it. When it comes to the recruit, I think they should scrap the degree program, 100% scrap
Mm.
that, because I think that attracts younger in service people who may not have necessarily had the most life experience which is required when it comes to being a cop, because you're going into people's homes and you're injecting yourself into people's lives when they're having a really terrible time, and you're expected to be relatable. Some people, some younger people who are 18, 19, who I've worked with, have been absolutely brilliant. Others, not so much. Um, so I think you need to scrap the degree program. You don't need a degree to be a copper. I've always said this, and it attracts a younger demographic, and it actually stops people who are older in service, who maybe have not been to school or studied for the past 10, 15 years. They keep saying they want to get ex-army people and stuff like that into, ex-service people into the force, into the service. But if you've got someone who's come out of the army, who's been in for 10, 15 years, and then you tell them you need to do a degree when they can
Yeah, I
get them
mean,
skills and go elsewhere and earn
did
twice as
you do a
much.
degree? Did you do a degree as part of your entry?
No, I did it was like the Ipple dip, so I just did the application and the interview and everything else.
All right, because I think our force was the pilot. So
Oh,
Cleveland
really?
Police was the pilot for these degrees, and it was like a foundation degree in policing.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a classroom probably for about 9 months,
Mhm.
learning word for word the definitions of burglary, theft, and everything else. And actually, when I went out station, I learnt more in a few weeks out there on the street
Mhm.
than what I did at uni.
You learn
And my
policing by
tutor,
doing it.
my tutor was laughing at me at some of the stuff I was coming out with because you do it very that you're like a robot, aren't you?
Yeah.
Come out of uni, you're like a robot. You've got to say things in a certain way, and you almost forget how to speak to people. And my tutor was like, "What was all that about? You don't have to. say that and do it that way. You
Yeah.
do this. So you're almost taught how to do the job properly. But going back to the initial comments about whether newer cops maybe not at the standard that they used to be. But that just brings me back to a story that I can tell about. There was a cop on my shift. I've no idea how this cop got in the job. Who was scared of the dark.
Fucking heard of that. I've unfortunately that's not the first time I've heard that sort of thing. And you've met an officer like that.
On my shift, yeah.
That is
They were on
insane.
my shift. Yeah, so, and the people that know me will be messaging me as soon as they've seen this, and they'll be like, can't believe you told him this story. But yeah, there was a job where we had to break off on a night shift. We had to break off, and she had to obtain details for a missing person from a kid's home. And then I had to go off to a domestic because we just short-staffed. Everybody was tied
Mhm.
up, and then another double crew unit peeled off from one another and whatever else. And then yeah, this was on a night shift. It was about 1 a.m, and then all I heard was this cop shout up saying, "Oh, can somebody give me a lift?" Bearing in mind it was a 15-minute walk from the kids' home to the Nick,
Mhm.
and the sergeant was like, "Can you just walk? Can you just walk, please? Because everyone's tied up." And she was like, "Well, I don't want to walk. I don't want to walk. It's dark outside." Over the air. It was all over the air. And he said, "You're a police officer, so start walking now." And then
Yeah.
it was just going back and forth. I just
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. It's like, but this same cop was scared of dogs. So there was a job out. We both went to his double crewed unit, domestic. Could hear screaming and shouting inside. So I run to the front door, open the front door, and then she just stood at the end of the pavement. I was like, "Are you coming?" She's like, "No, no, no, I'm scared of dogs." All right, I'll just deal with that
I'll
domestic
just deal
myself
with
then,
it
should I?
myself then. I
So we can all tell stories about incompetent cops or, um, yeah,
there's
it's not a new thing.
no, and I get you, and are you a true crime buff? Do you love listening to spooky stories, horror stories based on real events and real places? Then you absolutely love the Anthology of Horror podcast hosted by Springfield Jack. The Anthology of Horror podcast pulls in hundreds of thousands of listeners every single month, detailing stories of true crime, of insidious intent, of dark horror, spooky stories, and much, much more. Springfield Jack's unique way of weaving a narrative is absolutely unparalleled by any other podcast of its nature, and there is an extensive back catalogue to sink your teeth right in. But just be warned, once this podcast grabs you around the throat, it's unlikely to let you go. That's Anthology of Horror. Check out the podcast right now. Yeah. It's easy with the stories to bash new recruits and tar them all with the same brush. I've worked with some absolute fucking mint cops who have had half my service. They're just starting out. But when it comes to the actual recruitment side, because we're losing so many cops now, that's a fucking another topic completely about retention and keeping older bobbies, because we need good cops. Like, society crumbles if
Mm.
there's no law and order. But I'm being told by different people and things what I'm looking into, like, because the forces are struggling to keep hold of bobbies, they're reducing the standard of people coming in. So I've heard that a Bobby told me the other day. I was having an interview with him actually. He came on there, and he said, um, the recruitment, they needed so many bobbies, but so many people couldn't pass the requirements to get in. But because they needed to fill up the numbers, they actually contacted cops who weren't good enough to offer them the job because they needed it. I'm being told there's officers who now don't have to do the final interview because too many people fail it, so they don't have to do it. Which,
Mm.
I mean, for me, when I was trying to get in the place, I studied for weeks for that final interview, if not longer, writing out my answers, writing out the questions, getting people to quiz me on them until it was absolutely, on the tip of my tongue, the perfect answer. So if you really want it, you'll work for it. So they're reducing that. I mean, even such thing as like the fitness test. which is a massive bugbear of mine. One, it's not applicable to the job anyway, with the kind of test what they have to do. But there's people who can't pass a fitness test and being allowed in because they need the numbers. So in that
Yeah,
sense,
but I mean, equally, you've got cops that have really they've done a long, long time in the police, so they might have done 25 years or whatever, and they might have joined at 40 years old.
yeah,
So is it fit for purpose sending these on a PST refresher, doing the fitness test? It isn't, not really.
I think it's the style of fitness test anyway. Because I mean, a bleep test, you run 10 meters, you turn around, and then you run back. There's just no situation in the police where you're going to need that. I think it should be
No.
like, how fast can you run a quarter of a kilometer or whatever. And I mean, I understand what you're saying in the sense of some cops might join a little bit later, but if your colleague's getting a red kicked in and they're pressing the red button, you need to be able to cover that distance as quick as possible. So
Mm.
I get what you're saying, like with the fitness
But yeah,
testing.
but equally, you could have somebody that can get level 15 on a bleep test and personal safety training, yet they might be scared in a situation like that and just back off. Who would
Yeah.
you rather have? Would you rather have somebody who can do level 3 or 4 on a fitness test, somebody that's going to dive in and save you, help you,
Mhm.
or somebody who's a really good, like a cross country runner, who's too scared to act? I think it's difficult, and I think it's more complex than how it sounds. And I certainly think when you get to a certain age as well in the police, that you should have the option to go somewhere like some sort of back office role, and not just be expected to stay on response. Because I
Yeah.
think when you get to a certain age, it's not great rolling around with people and whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, and you tend to find that, don't you? Like, I think response definitely has a shelf life, and not just a case of that's where people go and serve their initial time, and then they might move on. But I think with the demand of the shifts and the things what you actually have to deal with, and you know, you're getting older, you're in your 40s, you're not wanting to be rolling around with an 18-year-old coked off his head on a middle of a town centre on a
Mm.
Friday night, are you? At 3 in the morning. It's so it's definitely got a shelf life in that sense. Just on just on response, Paul, like, I mean, for me, I think response officers should be given more incentive to stay on because it's the backbone of policing. And it seems to be the place where everyone can't wait to get off. So do you think there should be some kind of incentive when it comes to response policing?
Oh, well, what incentive? Financial incentive?
Essentially?
For me, the way response was going, certainly when I left, it's got worse since then. No amount of money would keep me there,
Yeah.
and I think your physical and mental well-being is more important than money, and more important than incentives. I think the only way to fix response and make it the department where everybody wants to go, which it used to be at one point, is to treat people better, treat your workforce better,
Yeah.
manage the crimes better, make braver decisions, and get rid of jobs that where you're not getting cooperation from a so-called victim of crime, rather
Mhm.
than chasing for weeks on end. And I think we just need to be. And I'm not. By the way, I'm not saying bin burglaries, bin thefts, um, bin all of these crimes, which is something we've seen in recent years in the press. But there are jobs, there are incidents that come in where you're like, this can be closed. This can be closed. We've done this investigation. It's
Mhm.
done.
Definitely agree
Or I
with you.
mean,
Treating cops better. Treating cops better
yeah,
is certainly
it's
on
about
response.
keeping. We need to keep the jobs down. We need to keep the number of jobs down. We need to help the cops manage their workloads,
Yeah.
because at the moment they're not getting the time that they need to serve members of the public, and that is why they joined the police. So I don't think any amount of incentives will help. I think that the way things get better is from the top. It's down to the top, the chiefs, to start making brave decisions. And uh, yeah,
100% agree, and I think there'll be people listening to that fucking cheering, mate. I think people hear that, like, no one ever tells me I went off response because the money was shit. It's
Mm.
always I went off response because I didn't care about my mental health, or I was getting PTSD, or I was burnt out, or we didn't have enough staff, or it became too dangerous. They're the reasons, and those are the things which the bosses at the top need to stop thinking about their own
And I
promotions.
tell you what I really hate, what I really, really hate, is when you've had people in those positions at the top or near the top, they've left the job, and then they're banging the drum and they're like, "Oh, things need to change." It's like, no, you had your time, and they get loads of engagement on social media. It's like you've had your time to make those positive changes, but what have you done? You've done nothing. You've creamed your salary. That is one thing that really riles me.
Totally
I
agree.
tell you what, yeah,
This
I'm
this
boiling just thinking
ex
about it.
this ex superintendent who retired 5 years ago, who was a superintendent and a position of serious authority for the past 20 years of their career, who licked ass. They did what the boss above them wanted. They didn't give a shit about the cop on the ground. They just saw figures and stats and numbers, climbed all the way to the position, retired with a nice chunky pension, and then go, yeah, it's really bad, isn't it, in the police? Well, when you were in the fucking job, why didn't you do something about it? But instead, you did what the rest of them do, is you just think about number one, and you're in the bloody in club, you're in the SLT team, and you don't give a shit about the cops on the ground. And then you wonder why everyone's bloody leaving, and why people don't want to be cops, and why people don't want to stay, and why mental health's in the absolute shit pan. And and you have the absolute audacity to go onto national TV or something like that and say, "Yeah, it's really tough. Things need to change, and the police
Yeah,
need to do more." Well, what
yeah.
the hell
It's
did
like,
you do when
what
you
did
were on
you
there?
do?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That really winds me up. But what I would love to see, I'd love to see, and I'm sure there is one of all the chief constables that are in position today to take a trip to one of their police stations with the busiest response shifts, sit down with them for half an hour initially, and you ask them how their job can be fixed.
Mhm.
And then you implement things that make the life easier for those cops.
Well, my old force did that. Is that they called it the Chiefs? They called it the Chief Con Road Show. Anyway, so we call it Chief Con Roadshow, where the Chief Con would visit all the stations and all the response blocks, and you would have the superintendent stood next to him. You'd have the chief superintendent, you'd have inspectors, you'd have all the SLT and all the leadership all smiling and nodding, yes, sir, everything's fine, everything's really, really good. And then it's the chief con would say, right, I want to speak to some of the bobbies in that room over there. And they would get the cops would get a whisper in the ear basically saying, do not tell him anything wrong. He doesn't want to hear that.
Mm,
No, he does want to hear that. That's why he's here.
yeah,
But you don't want us to say that because that makes you look bad. So
we used to get told to get out the office whenever there was big brass coming.
yeah,
We were
we
like, we
had the
don't.
same.
Yeah, they were like, we don't want anybody in the parade room doing anything. So plan your time around this. Big brass is coming at 1 o'clock, so you all need to be out
Yeah.
because because there was the perception that it would make our shift look lazy if we're all inside doing a case file or doing paperwork. Why they all
Yeah.
sat around? Why? Do you know what I mean?
Or mate, even just having a minute,
Yeah,
you're on your fifth shift. It's bloody 6 o'clock in the evening or whatever it is. You're absolutely knackered. You're just having 5 minutes, and it's like, no, get out. The bosses are coming. Well, good, because I would like to talk to the boss about
yeah,
what's going on.
yeah,
But that wouldn't look good
yeah.
for your promotion, would it?
No.
Anyway, right. Fucking love a good rant. How good's a good rant?
I don't even know what we were talking about initially before.
Oh, recruits. And they went into
Yeah,
response and everything
yeah,
else. Yeah. So
yeah. But
in
no,
answer to your question, response, I don't know, recruits are
the
recruits, and
one
it's the job itself.
the one thing or a couple of things that I do think newer recruits could improve on, by the way, is and I've had this I've dealt with this personally through friends and family is communication. Communication, certainly in some of the cases that I'm aware of, are massively lacking. I mean, we've got victims code of practice, so in theory, cops should be updating victims weekly or every 28 days or whatever it might be. I do think cops across the board should be better at communicating. Just drop a note through the door. Do you know what I mean? It's just keeping people updated, because if they're not updated, they're going to be on edge and they're going to wonder what's happening. They're going to be calling the office and everything else. But that is one thing that we were really good at as a response shift when I was working the job. We would drop off notes for each other just to keep people up to date.
Mhm.
But I do think that's lacking today.
Empathy burnout's a big problem, and that's something that doesn't get spoke about enough. And when it comes to dealing with people and dealing with incidents, to the member of the public, that's the worst incident that's ever happened to them. They've put in the faith in the police, they want to be updated. So I can completely understand where the members of the public are coming from, that, you know, they want a good service from the police. And I always tried my best. Every shift, I'd have a list of people I need to contact, even if it was just an email or a text, even if there was no
Yeah,
update. It's just to let you know, no update yet. Still waiting on X, Y, and Z. Great. I know it's up to you. You've not forgotten about me. But then there's
yeah,
empathy burnout, what can come in, where cops can, unfortunately, because of how much they're overworked and the stresses they're under, they don't see it as there's this person here relying on me. They see it as it's another job in my workload. And that's a serious problem. And it's not the Bobby's fault, it's the stress of the organization, what they put on the cops a lot of the time. But yeah, I completely agree. We need to,
yeah. But there's something that I always stuck by when I was a serving cop was the person that you're dealing with. If would a member of your family be happy with the way that you were dealing with this member of the public or
mm,
dealing with this victim of crime? If the answer is yes, then I was happy. So I get empathy burnout, but there is a way to speak to people.
yeah.
There is a way to deal with people. But yeah, I always used to just treat people almost like a member of the family, or
Yeah, and I think
yeah.
that's a good way to be, mate, is look at it like that. Um, so yeah, I completely agree. I think
Mhm.
it's necessary. So, okay, so we've got this other story here. So this is titled, fuck me, why do people send me this stuff? We've got one called The Sex Shop Break-In. The very so the last episode I did was all about death. And this one seems to be all about nefarious things and body parts and stuff. Anyway, so night shift around 2 a.m. A call comes in. Break in at a sex shop. Me and my crewmate turn up, secure the place, wait for the dog man. He goes in, his dog immediately starts barking at a mannequin dressed in full gimp gear. Classy. We search, all clear, then spot a hatch into the ceiling. Up we go. As I'm moving across, my foot goes through the ceiling tile and I start to fall. The dog man, lightning reflexes, grabs my belt and stops me going all the way through. I hit the deck hard on my hip and side. Really hurts, but at least I didn't fall through completely. I looked down, right beneath where I'd landed was a shelf, fuck's sake. Right beneath where I'd
Oh
landed was a shelf stacked full of enormous dildos. I'd have been impaled like a kebab. No lube, no dignity. Later, while my mate's taking a statement, I noticed a DVD section. One caught my eye. Gobbling Grannies Volume 4. All I could think was, bloody hell, volumes 1 to 3 must have sold well to warrant a fourth. I walked out with a bruise the size of England on my ass and a newfound respect for the dog man who literally saved me from a death from dildo. People people just don't fucking understand what happens, do they?
no, and that is a lot more believable than the
Getting
yeah.
ragged around by a
I've
dog.
yeah.
I mean, I mean that is that cakes? If you find yourself impaled by a dildo, is that cakes? Should that go in the cake fines on
It's
the
very
arc?
specific, though, isn't it? It's a very specific offence, isn't
I
it?
I think that
I'm
shouldn't
not
be.
sure how many times. I'm not sure how many times that offence would be committed, but
But I think
yeah,
I think that should be like you take your block out to dinner. I think that's like because it's so extreme. I think that should be that's not cakes. That's pay them all for a night out.
I'm not sure why, but that's just reminded me of a job that I went to. It's not sex shop related, by the way. It
Okay.
was a MISPA. I don't know whether you've had this before, but there was a MISPA called in, and this woman had not returned home from a night out at the pub or whatever, and it was about 5 in the morning. Husband really riled up about it. He's like, "This is not like her," and everything else. And I was like, "There's there's no sign at all that she'd planned to leave or anything. Happily married and never been missing before. Out of character." So I was like, "Where was she? Where was she before she's gone missing?" "Oh, she was at such and such a pub." So I was like, "Right, okay." I was like, "I'm going to go at that pub and just have a quick look." And there she was. She's on the inside, wanting to be out. They'd locked her in. She'd gone at the toilets. They'd not checked the toilets or anything. And then literally, I called up. I was like, "I found the MISPA. She's locked in the pub." Unreal.
Banging on, let me the fuck out. I can't get
Uh,
out. That's
yeah, but I bet
brilliant.
there's a few cops with the similar story. So
I
if you ever have
agree.
a MISPA and they were last seen in a pub or a bar, always check the building.
The building. My
Because
mate used to be dead good at finding mispers. Certainly, if they were young, he'd just go to every McDonald's in the area, and 9 times out of 10, they were there having a Mackies or something with the mates. Brilliant. I remember I had one similar story. It was it was a lady who was a social worker, and she had been reported missing. She was like mid-20s, been reported missing. Again, no issues, no like history of mental health or anything like that. So he was like, well, why she gone missing? So she ended up being like a high risk missing person because we're like, well, what the fuck's going on? Anyway, I'm doing all my checks and everything else. She then turns back up at home. Looks absolutely knackered. So she went missing on the Friday. She went to Manchester. She went on a night out. She then was seen leaving with some guy. And then this is like the Monday, so mid afternoon Monday. So she missed work and everything else. And she just turns up. So I said to her, like, where have you been? She says, no, I was in town and I met this guy. One thing led to another. I ended up going back home with him. And she said for the last 4 days or 3 days, she has been taking cocaine and drinking lots of vodka and having sex with him and his 5 housemates. So she'd had a busy weekend. And as she said to me as I was leaving, she went, I'm just really tired. I was like, yeah, I believe you.
Oh.
And this was a fucking social worker. Anyway.
I used to love MISPAs, and there's another job that stands out for me. So a lot of the response cops I work with would try and avoid the MISPA packages like the
Mhm.
plague because a lot of them were like rolling regular MISPAs, people subject to care orders and whatever else trying to evade police or whatever. But there was this package I got handed, and it was a lad, I think he was about 15, subject to a care order. And this package had been going for about 3 weeks. And I was reading the package. They were searching houses, they were searching family and friends' houses regular. So they were doing the job. But I was like, I used to always love taking the MISPAs and trying to do something extra with them, something that's maybe not been thought of or not been done. So this is one for probably the newer cops that are coming in. A little tip here. So what I did was I started looking on the Intel system for it was family members or estranged family members. So, for example, there was an uncle whose house had been checked regular, had been searched, and he'd recently separated from his partner, so this boy's auntie, and they'd been separated about 2, 3, 4 months or something. So I thought, oh, I might give her a ring. I might give her a ring and just see if she's got any leads or she's got a. She's surely better placed to give us an idea of where he could be. This kid. And the first thing she said was, well, she started having a rant about her ex-partner initially, which was fine. And then she said, oh, somewhere where you could check is behind the wardrobe in the bedroom. There's a door. Have a look in there. Because quite often when he went missing, when I was with his uncle, that's where he would be. But it didn't come from me. Okay, so I was like, no, it didn't come from you. So sure enough, I went there. So I had to pretend. I did a whole search of the house and then got to the bedroom and then started looking around the back of the wardrobe. And I was like, oh, is there a door behind there? He went, yeah. Why? And I said, can we just move the wardrobe, please? And sure enough, this kid was in there.
Right.
So the uncle was locked up for harbouring. Yeah, harbouring him.
Fucking hell.
But the kid was there. The kid was going missing to spend time with his uncle. So he hadn't been kidnapped. He hadn't been taken from the
Yeah.
street or whatever. But he wasn't meant to go to his uncle's. So
Right.
yeah. So uncle got locked up. Kid was returned to his home. So yeah. So always, like, if any new cops are listening, always check. Always ring or call ex-partners of family members, because quite often they'll spill the
And
beans.
check the attic as well. There was a cop
Mm,
who was talking to recently, and they told me that years ago they went to a job, and again missing person, and they're knocking on the ex-boyfriend's house, and he's like, she's not here, you can have a look and all the rest of it. So they go in, have a look, and as they're about to leave, one of the other bobbies went, has anyone checked the attic to make sure she's not dead in there? And they thought, oh, for fuck's sake, well, we've got her now, haven't we? Anyway, they went up and they checked the attic, and it was quite a long attic. So they went,
mm.
and as soon as he opened the attic, flies, everything, and she was there. He killed her.
Oh,
She'd been there for a couple of weeks, dead. Um, so he got lots of for murder. So yeah, always check the attics, check the outhouses, check
yeah.
in like the if there's any grassland, check around there. Because a lot of the time, if somebody tops somebody, they'll generally hide it quite close. I've found. Um,
Mm.
so this one's I have read this one. This one's fucking brilliant. So I got a call about a bloke growing cannabis. We rock up and he answers the door. I was single crewed. He's calm at first and then kicks off. As I'm scrapping with him, a member of the public jumps in to help. Between us, we get one cuff on and then the other. And I think I've done a cracking job. Unfortunately, after all the chaos, I then realise I've handcuffed the member of the public to the suspect. And during me taking them to the floor, I body slammed both of them to the ground.
Oh,
You know what? I can see how easily that could happen because you're
yeah.
grabbing, these fucking grabbing everywhere. There's hands. There's also you're just trying to get any cuff on what in whatever way you can.
But what
So
happened after? Do we know what happened after as a
doesn't
result?
say no, doesn't say what I imagine.
Oh,
I imagine it's just a case of oh shit, sorry, let's put this cuff on there. Please don't say anything. But surely that's got to be cakes. Surely
that
that is
is absolutely, yeah,
that
absolutely.
you've handcuffed the member of the public who tried to help you.
Yeah, but
Um,
I mean, to be fair, the suspect wasn't going anywhere unless he took the member of the public with him.
I mean that's true. That is true.
I
You've
mean, I've
got
had it before. I don't know whether you have, where there's been cops that have held people in the back of a police car, cuffed, and then whilst they're off doing another inquiry, they've left them there while they're speaking to a member of the public. In which time, the guy that's cuffed or whatever has wound down the window. This was when we had the window winders, the manual ones,
yeah,
and then just chucked himself out the window and run off with the
yeah.
cuffs attached.
Yeah, we had that. It was in a nighttime economy. So town centre, some lad's been locked up. We took him in the back of the car, and then what he's managed to do is he's managed to crawl across to the front seat and let him out, let himself out. So then I've ended up chasing this lad who was cuffed to the front, and I just fucking gassed him. It was gassed him and put him to the floor and put him. Then he was like held him and was like, right, we need a van. And he's. I think when he was running round, he was going, look at me, top shagger. Oh, top shaggers on the loose. I'm like, fucking hell. So I don't think the Bobby who actually did that had to buy cakes, but I think we all reminded him he needed to buy cakes. But he was one of them
Oh
cops
yeah.
where the amount of time he fucked up, if he bought cakes every single time, he'd have been bankrupt. The poor lad. He was a good cop actually, but well, yeah,
The thing is, as much as we hear, well, we know how hard the job is at the moment. You just can't buy those moments, can you?
oh, it's
Like,
some
there's no
hilarious
other job.
things.
There's no other job in the world where you'd be exposed. Yes, you've got your trauma, your really bad stuff, but the really funny stuff
Oh
you
yeah,
would not experience in any other job.
yeah. I had a Bobby message me said one thing he did. when he was more senior in his old force. Didn't do it in the force I met him in. He said he used to um, he welded somebody's locker shut and then moved it to another moved it to another station. I've had a few people tell me that they move cops lockers to other stations as well. It's just, but there are some very funny moments which can happen in the police and in emergency services. There's a lot of awful things you can encounter too, but you've just some of the stuff, man. You've just got to laugh, haven't you, when it comes to things like
Yeah.
that. Um, so there's one here. My wife works at an NHS hospital in the pharmacy. The pharmacy had trouble sourcing a drug, so they went to another supplier. And when they checked the instructions, the medication said not to be used on pregnant bitches. The same drug apparently
Huh?
was used for animals and humans, but instructions for animals in an NHS hospital. Well, that's
Nice.
yeah, not
You
to be
get a
used on
shock
pregnant
reading that,
bitches.
wouldn't you?
I know, right? Excuse me. The fuck? What's this say? Oh yeah, sorry that. But also, why are they using medication which can also be used for dogs? That's a bit concerning.
I don't know. I'd love to know what medication was it. Do we know?
No, it doesn't say. I'd love to find out.
Oh,
I might message
yeah,
him back and say more context, please, because I want that
yeah. Oh, I
medication.
mean, all pharmacists and doctors will be shouting at us now. Yeah, of course. There's loads of medications that are used for both.
Well, by all means, message in and tell me off. I'm always up for the engagement.
Yeah.
Okay, so this last one is. I'd like to know your thoughts on this. I think you'll have quite a bit to say. So, I've been in the job for nearly 7 years, and I'm a trim practitioner. So, for
Yeah,
anyone
yeah.
doesn't understand, the trim is when there's been something really bad happen, a traumatic incident. They will go and basically have a debrief with the bobbies. So you can imagine all the stuff what they have to hear. So I help others with trauma. Trouble is, I've been hiding my own. 4 years, I
Mm.
kept the trauma buried until one job broke me, full breakdown, and I turned to alcohol. Finally opened up to my father. My GP reckoned it was complex PTSD, gave me medication and told me to go through occupational health. I was meant to be in plain clothes only, as being in uniform was a trigger. I took 4 months
Mm.
just to get an appointment. In the meantime, my chief inspector ordered me back into uniform, even though I'd explained that it would re-trigger me. Sure enough, it did, and I lost it, and I had to go home. When I came back after rest days, I was told again, put on the uniform, which I did. Then the sergeant pulls me aside and asks how I'm coping. I told him the truth. I'd had a suicidal thought, but I hadn't any plan or intention. I just was
Mm.
honest, and he sent me home. That night, 9 p.m., we get a knock on the door. Two uniformed officers performing a welfare check on my children because my supervisor had reported that I wasn't a fit parent due to my mental state. Social services became involved, my wife dragged into it, all because I opened up about my mental health. The job's fucked. That's fucking disgusting. That's awful that happened. And if the officers listening just sent that in, like, I'm so sorry that happened, and you should not have been treated like that at all. That's disgusting.
I think I might have had this officer contact me before,
Oh, really?
or yeah, or it's certainly very very similar situation with the whole suicidal thought and welfare check on kids and things. It might be a different person, but uh, if it's not, it just shows that it's happened elsewhere as well.
Yeah,
It's really concerning.
it's sad that
Yeah,
um
yeah, it is.
the fact you're being. I mean, listen, I get that. I get things. People are short staffed, and I understand the needs of the organisation, and everything else. But all what you're doing there is for that temporary solution of getting another officer out is you're breaking you're breaking that officer more long term. So you're actually creating problems more further down the line. And then of course that then shows other officers that the the job when it comes to welfare isn't looked after. And I've had loads of officers message me and say, like, even though that they put on these welfare days and you have this and all the rest of it, like the actual welfare support isn't there, certainly in the long term. Like, you've got CPTSD as a result of the job. Why are they telling you that you need to go and speak to your GP? they should be putting
Mm.
occupational health things in place more long term, because it's as a result of the job and the stresses of the job and your role that you are being put into those positions where you are becoming traumatized. And
I think there's a huge void in. I think there's a huge lack of awareness from supervisors, especially whether it be sergeant, inspector, chief inspector, in relation to PTSD, especially. I mean, until recently, I was unaware of just how much of an issue PTSD is within the police force.
yeah,
The amount of people I've had on the Pocket Sergeant podcast, and we've got speaking. Like I've known that they were a cop. I've known that they've set up businesses and things like that. But a lot of them, or yeah, a lot of them tell me about the PTSD. It's
yeah,
like we should be better. Like the supervisors, especially, the job should be better.
yeah, yeah.
But that's really poor.
One thing what really annoys me, Paul, is when I get comments whenever I talk about PTSD and mental health in the service, is people going, well, they know what they signed up for. Or even worse, ex cops saying, I did 30 years on the job, it wasn't a problem for me. Like, I've met those bobbies who say, "Well, you just get on with it, it's just." But those cops have since retired, and they either have an alcohol problem, or they find that they still are thinking. Like I know one personally, um, and he's very much like, "Oh, well, I was in the police, God knows how many years," and you just get on with it. But then, if you talk to him about the job, he will tell you about this incident he went to 30 years ago, which still plays on his mind, and it's like,
Mm,
yeah, because you never didn't deal with it because that was a culture back then. And the culture really, the shift in culture needs to change. You wouldn't tell someone who's just come back from Afghanistan who's seen his mates have his legs blown off, oh, well, you know what you signed up for, deal with it. So why is the police any different?
mm,
Just because you're not dealing with guns and explosives, you're still dealing with human suffering. You're dealing with, the vicarious trauma there as well with instance what certainly this guy, someone who does the TISM stuff, you are trim, you're hearing other people's incidents, other people's trauma, people you care about as well, talk about the most horrendous things happen. So quite naturally, that's going to compound over time. And then the fact that the job's gone, oh, actually, we've not looked after him properly. I mean, I'm assuming it's a man. We've not looked after him properly. We should probably cover our own arse here and send some cops around to do a welfare check, and not on him, but on the children because of things he said. Like as a result of what you've done and the position you put this officer in repeatedly when they've asked for help and support, like that's the problem. You have put him in that position. So yeah, it's absolutely atrocious. And I think when you're saying about PTSD, mate, I think it's like I remember doing some looking into it, and I think according to the Police Federation, it's like 35% of all police officers would qualify for having PTSD. That's
that's
that's a
high.
that's a third. It's
That's
more than a
high.
third.
Really high number.
Yeah, and that's from like I said, that's from the police fed. It's that's absolutely horrendous that that's happened, and that's all I can say is that the chief inspector should be absolutely fucking ashamed of themselves. They should not be in that position of authority. Um, and PTSD is a real thing. And if you do suffer with things, you need to identify it, you need to name it, and you need to say, I need to talk to someone, I need some help. Um, I remember when I was in, I went to a hanging, and I've been to a few hangings, and they're never nice, but there was one, he was playing in my mind a bit. And I went to my sergeant and I said, and he was a bit of an older sergeant as well, cracking bloke. And he turned around like because he came to the job with us, and I said, "Oh, I keep thinking about that hanging, like I just keep imagining it in my mind." And he said, "Right," and he literally stood up and said, "Come with me." And we just walked into the back room, and he just said, "Right, talk to me. What's going on?" And we for about 10, 15 minutes, he didn't have his radio or nothing. He just went 10, 15 minutes. Let's have a talk about it. Let's go through it. Let's see how you're feeling. And he was fine. After that, absolutely
Mm.
fine. Wasn't playing in my mind again because that supervisor understood that I was showing signs of some kind of PTSD. And he was like, leave the job, leave my commitments for now. That can all wait. My cop needs and needs some support. cracking bloke. He's retired since, but absolutely awesome supervisor. And they need more. They need more of that. Really do.
Yeah, and well, they need more of that, but they also need less of the ones that have no idea what they're doing. I know for years, the job have focused on cops who can regurgitate as much policing
Legislation and
manual stuff as possible. Yeah,
yeah,
when actually they haven't got the man management skills. So if they are that incompetent, remove them,
yeah.
take the pips off them, because that's something that we're not doing. We're promoting people, but how often do you hear of people that have been demoted? You don't, do you? They're either they're either just left doing what they're doing, ruining their workforce, or they're sent to headquarters where they're never seen again, still milking a decent salary. So I think there needs to be a big overhaul of policing, and that would be one thing that I'd do. However, which way you'd do it, being able to take out the people they just don't cut it. They just
Shouldn't be
don't
there.
care. They
It's
just
it
don't care for the workforce.
People aren't promoted based off how good they are in a management position with people. They're promoted on how good they make the force look on paper and how good they are at in an interview or if they can pass an exam. So they can regurgitate information what they've learned to pass an exam. And then when they go for the board, it's how good have you made the police force look as a result. And then when they get
Mm.
into those positions of power, I don't know, there's like that chief
I
inspector.
think what I think what happens. I think what happens when you start going above the rank of probably inspector. From sergeant inspector, you're kind of looking down. You're kind of looking at your sergeants and your front line. But then when you start getting to chief inspector level, I think what happens is you're looking up.
Yeah,
You're looking. You're looking at the more, I don't know, strategic level. You forget about what is, I'm going to say below you. I mean below in terms of rank.
I go, man.
You forget about everything below. You're just looking at up there, and then you're looking at the next promotion. And it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Everybody has seen it.
We had a new thing come in right before I left. It was a new thing came in, and we had to. It was fucking what was it? It was something to do with paperwork, and you had to put on this new template for on every single incident, even if it was like a duplication, you had to put it on that, and you had to go through
Mm.
all, you had to tick all the box. And when it came to redactions, it came to GDPR. When it would basically it would just make any paperwork you had to do 10 times as long for the same result.
Yeah,
But some assistant chief constable or superintendent, whatever word they wanted the next promotion, they'd identified this really obscure statistic which we could improve on, and doing this would improve that. Even though it would make everybody's life harder, it made the force look better, which would then mean they would get their next promotion. So I completely
yeah,
understand what you're saying, mate. Is when you get so high, you forget about the people below you. And again, I mean that in like the rank sense. You forget about the people who are going out doing the more difficult job while you're sat in an ivory tower somewhere, making the force look better. And you can guarantee that that officer, when they retire, will be on BBC News or something like that, saying, "Yeah, well, frontline policing's in the state, isn't it?" Yeah, and you were in the position
mm.
to change it, but instead you willingly made it much more difficult for the sake of your own career. So yeah, bosses, we promote the wrong people, and unfortunately, a lot of the officers who would make really, really good supervisors don't get promoted
Yeah.
because they're not pulling the corporate line, they're not pulling that
No,
political
because
line.
they challenge things that the organisation doesn't want them to challenge.
Exactly.
They call things out. They're not yes people.
And unfortunately, that's that. I always say, like, how much is a soul worth? It's actually worth a lot less than you think.
Yeah,
Okay, so that is the rants and stories. Thank you everyone for sending those in. So we'd like to finish with a good news story because, of course, these topics quite naturally can get quite heavy. So we'd like to finish with a good news story. So, Paul, I'd love your thoughts on this one. So this comes from the NHS. So there's a system that alerts trained volunteers to medical emergencies nearby is being introduced by the ambulance service. South Central Ambulance Service is using the Good Samaritan activated medics app known as Good Sam, which uses mobile GPS technology to message volunteers within 500 meters of an incident. It is hoped that respondents could begin CPR before an ambulance arrives, and every minute without intervention reduces the chances of survival by up to 10%. So, therefore, um, so essentially what's happening is people's lives are being saved because people can sign up to this volunteer service. So if you're in a
Yeah.
shopping center or you're, stuck in traffic and there's an incident going on ahead, someone's having a cardiac arrest or something like that, you can go, oh, I'm getting this notification here. I can go and help them and keep them stable and alive until an ambulance manages to get there. I think that's that's a cracking invention. I think that's really, really good. I might sign up for that actually.
I'd love to know how many users I've got. And I'd love to see any case studies as well. So if anybody's watching, I'd love to know about.
Well, that app's called Good Sam. GOODSAM.
I'm
And I
sure
think
I've heard of that. I'm sure I've heard it.
it's the first time I've heard of it when I was doing some research on it. But yeah, I think it's a cracking idea. And certainly, if I was having a medical emergency or a family member was, I'd like to know that somebody nearby is part of that app. So I think I'll definitely sign up for that, and I encourage other people to do it as well. We'll put the link for that in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, anyway, that's everything from us, Paul. So where can people find you?
Well, you can find the Pocket Sergeant podcast on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major platforms. If you want to take a look at the Pocket Sergeant app, you can do. That's available for download on the App Store and Google Play Store. I'm on LinkedIn. Pocket Sergeant's on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and everything. And
Here we go. Great book.
shameless plug. Yeah, you've read it, haven't you?
I've read it. It was very, very good.
So I've written a book as well called From Trauma to Triumph, the Pocket Sergeant Journey. It details my journey through the care system, failing at school, and then going on to join the police and then build the app.
The title of that book is really apt because it really is because you didn't have the easiest start, mate, from what I've read, and where you managed to come to now is absolutely insane. So a true story of overcoming adversity and getting to a very triumphant place in life. So again, Paul, I would just like to say, mate, I think it's incredible where you've come from to where you are now and everything what you built in the process too. So I think it's absolutely meant. So fair play to you, mate. Okay, so that is everything from us. Remember to support the pod by subscribing, joining Patreon for exclusive goodies and everything else. Grab yourself a copy of my book, which everything else and merch and all the other links are in the description.
Don't buy his book. Don't buy his book. Buy my book.
Buy both of our books. Buy them both. Buy them now. Submit your stories, your rants, and just general comments by emailing me at thejobpod25@gmail.com or message me on Instagram. You have been amazing. Thank you so much for checking out this podcast. Until next time, see you later.